Thank you. So I'll give a quick talk about this research project, and then Laura will talk, give us the top lines and findings of a great paper that she's just finished that we're working on and making an article out of. So the project I'm doing and that Laura's worked on for the last year, it's called Media Toil, and the idea is to sort of, if we take media as coming from communications, take media as a site of social struggle, we're interested in the evolution of this struggle. And if you think ultimately media might be a site of social struggle, but ultimately it is a struggle for people's minds, then there's an interesting link with motivated reasoning, barriers to that, and recognizing a lot of the campaignings and tactics across stakeholders in the oil sands trying to persuade people to accept or encourage different policy decisions towards pipelines, oil sands development and such. So the goal of this project was to try and essentially create like a Google image search for oil sands campaign material. And so what we did with a SSHRC IDG was to create a database, which is alpha stage, isn't public yet, but research just gathering all the campaigns or ads, report covers, PSAs, video ads, all we could find, and put it in a searchable database, with the goal of being able to look at how have these ads across stakeholders developed over time. Because a lot of these times you'll read analyses of single ads isolated and not in their context. But if you can put those ads and campaigns against the context of a timeline, and then view the struggle over the oil sands more as a ping pong match, right, where stakeholders will put out some ads, then someone will respond to that. This is what we wanted to look at. So we have where users will be able to search the media sources based on stakeholders from civil society, government, industry, Aboriginal. You have different media types from ads to photographs to report covers, all of this. Again, by stakeholders. And this was done through, none of this existed. We actually had to go through, identify stakeholders, gather all the material. It was very much a cat and mouse game. And one of the reasons this is important, we believe, is that everything online is very ephemeral. So ads will sort of appear, websites, then if Greenpeace has done a campaign, they don't renew the domain name, that URL dies. If a campaign organization puts ads on YouTube, videos on YouTube, and then makes those videos YouTube, they are now private. They are now removed from the public imagination. So our goal has been to try and offer this together, and so you can look at different campaigns where we'll have organizations by campaigns and such. And what Laura has done is Laura then was looking at ideas of risk. So trying to the next stage of this project, and we've been writing different papers about looking at what are the themes that we see emerging across stakeholders and between stakeholders, and looking at how the risks and the opportunities of the oil sands are presented.
So I'm happy to share with you the key findings from my major research paper that I just submitted this past month for my degree in communications. So as Monica mentioned at the beginning, Alberta's bitumen sands have become a flashpoint for political action and campaigning in the debate around Canada's energy future. The stakes are high and contested, yet the public's been witness to an increasing prevalence of promotional and marketing-oriented information on the issue. So in this context, I wanted to look at how risk discourses are used in bitumen sands advertising to persuade the public on future bitumen sands policy. So using risk society theory and social constructionism, I explored the representation of risk in paid bitumen sands advertisements that we collected online between January 1st, 2014 and August 31st, 2015. So I used a mixed method approach of content and discourse analysis, drawing on Roland Barthes' concept of mythology. So first, I assessed the most frequent risk types and risk subjects depicted in the bitumen sands related still advertisements by Aboriginal peoples, government, industry, and civil society stakeholders. And then I assessed what types of bitumen sands mythologies and underlying ideologies about the relationship between humans and nature are perpetuated to the public by illustrative examples of the top most frequently depicted risk types across each stakeholder group. So to capture the complexity of various conceptualizations of risk, presented to the public by different stakeholders, I used Arnaldi's conceptualization of risks as associations, so couplings of material problems and human understandings which extend into an unknown future. So to capture the various associations of explicit risk in bitumen sands advertisements, the study defined explicit risk as a threat that could impact your life, society, culture, or environment, and it is explicitly represented through visuals or identified through text or through a combination of both. And then to also operationalize the representation of risk absence and de-amplification, I needed additional terms. So to address this conceptual gap, I also assessed risk de-amplification through the presentation of implicit risks in combination with risk mitigation strategies, as well as risk absence through the representation of no risk. So implicit risk was defined as a threat that can impact your life, society, culture, or environment that is implied through a mitigation strategy, or through the imagined loss of something valued that's represented through visuals, text, or again, a combination of both. And then no risk was defined as a potential risk that is represented as presenting no threat to your life, society, culture, or environment, again, through visuals, text, or a combination. And then finally, I also coded for risk mitigation strategies, which were defined as a strategy, policy, or action to address, limit, or remove a threat that can impact your life, society, culture, or environment, and again, explicitly or implicitly represented through visuals, text, or a combination. So I'm going to jump down to the key results, and I can answer any questions on methodology or theory later. So in total, I ended up assessing 77 ads. So 57 of these were created by industry stakeholders, 14 by civil society, 6 by government, and 2 by Aboriginal stakeholders. So the content analysis results showed that the most frequently referenced broad risk category among civil society, which was in 93% of the ads, and Aboriginal stakeholders in all of their ads, was risks to the environment, and this is an example of the representation of this type of risk. And these stakeholders most often referenced explicit risks in relation to this risk topic. So the most frequently referenced broad risk category among the industry stakeholder group was culture, lifestyle, and community, and this is an example of this type of risk. The risks highlighted by industry tended to highlight implicit risks, so something related to oil presented as essential that would be risked with decreased oil supply. So in this example, it's the sonogram that uses oil products. And as well as the absence of risks and strategies to mitigate risks, with only 2 references to explicit risks across all of those ads. And then finally, the most frequently referenced broad risk category among government stakeholder group was international relations risks, and again, this is an example of this kind of risk. Significantly, all of the government stakeholder ads presented no risk associated with Canada's bitumen development, which was more than the overall percentage for industry ads. And half of the ads presented explicit risks associated with not developing or importing Canadian bitumen oil. So the government in power during the time of data collection was clearly an active player in this media conflict on the side of industry, which I thought may have implications for public trust and confidence in institutional processes for energy infrastructure development. So then, in regards to key trends across stakeholders, the environment was the most contested risk topic, illuminating a conflict over the visibility of environmental risks with conflicting representations across all stakeholders. So the environment was the top referenced risk category within civil society and Aboriginal stakeholder ads, as I mentioned before, which presented a high frequency of explicit environmental threats. So in contrast to this, government and industry stakeholders often presented either no environmental risk or de-amplified environmental threats through implicit references to environmental risks in the context of their mitigation through various strategies. And the most referenced strategy to address these threats was the application of innovation and technology. Conflictual representations of additional risks associated with industrial society were variously presented across multiple stakeholders, including contradictory framing of risks to energy supply, economy and livelihoods, lifestyle, culture and community, goods and products, as well as oil transportation. I also looked at absences, and key risk topic absences of note were the absence of health risks in government and industry ads, and the absence of public service in government revenue, as well as international relations risks in civil society and Aboriginal ads. So these opposing and often one-sided frames were further illustrated by the mythologies perpetuated by illustrative ads from the top referenced risk categories among each stakeholder group. So these ads here are the illustrative ads that I did discourse analysis and looked at underlying mythologies. So the first ad there on the left, the civil society mythology that Canada's tar sands threaten the environment and Indigenous communities, highlights explicit threats from bitumen sands development, ignoring any positive contributions of bitumen sands operations to society. This mythology rejects an oil-driven energy economy in favor of clean energy alternatives. On the far right there, the industry mythology that oil is essential to blissful domestic experiences supports the ideology that nature is for commodification. This commodification provides profits to implicated companies and their shareholders, while the mythology distracts from and ignores risks highlighted by other stakeholder groups, connecting the viewer to feel-good lifestyle experiences. And then in the center there, the government mythology that Canada provides sustainable and reliable energy also supports the ideology of nature as commodification, which again provides government revenues. But the mythology also supports the ideology of sustainability, which de-amplifies concerns of environmental risk through claims that economic growth of bitumen sands development is complementary to environmental protection. So taken together, these bitumen sand mythologies present a risk conflict over future bitumen sands development between risks to the environment and Indigenous communities advocated by civil society and Aboriginal groups threatened by these risks versus risks to domestic bliss and sustainable, reliable energy provision advocated by industry and government who profit on continued bitumen sands development. These mythologies are undercut by fundamentally opposing ideologies concerning the relationship between humans and nature. On the one hand, nature as commodification, compatible with sustainability, versus nature as protection, incompatible with an oil-based economy. So these opposing and one-sided mythologies reinforced to the public present conflictual messaging not well suited to balanced debate and discussion. And in relation to the key theme of this session, I would suggest that they not only reinforce but encourage motivated reasoning among the public. And further, the defining power to make risk visible is tipped in favor of industry advertisements in regards to the number of paid ads available to the public in a study sample. And these were also ads which the discourse analysis found may also be more engaging to the public because they related to people's individual experiences and were more engaging and positive. And the Aboriginal stakeholder group was the least represented in this media conflict. So those, overall in a nutshell, my key findings from my paper, and look forward to answering any questions, I guess, at the end of the